If you need to pass GED or HiSET math, then you're in the right place, because in this video I'm going to teach you the tips and tricks and strategies you need to know so that you can pass the test fast and move on to bigger and better things in life like college or a better job, and we're going to get started right now. Computer salespeople at a local store earn a $100 commission per computer for the first 5 computers they sell each month. For every additional computer they sell during that month, the commission per computer is 1.5 times the rate for the first 5. Which of the following is the total commission earned by a salesperson who sells 8 computers in a month? Is it A, B, C, D, or E? So now would be a good time to have you pause the video, try to work through the problem, and if you get stuck, don't worry, because we're just going to go over it. Okay, this is a little bit of a tricky question here, so if you had trouble with this, don't worry. We're going to break it down here. So we're told that for the first 5 computers, the commission is $100 per computer. All right, so we have $100 commission per 1 computer. And so the salesperson here sold 8 computers total. So for the first 5 computers sold, all right, we can just do 5 times 100 here. And that tells us that the salesperson made $500 total on the first 5 computers. Now, the salesperson again sold 8 computers total. So now we have to figure out how much the salesperson made in total altogether here. So we know that for after the first 5 computers are sold, the commission is going to be 1.5 times the rate for the first 5. So we have to do 1.5 times the rate for the first 5 computers sold. And the rate was $100 per 1 computer. Okay, so we take that initial rate and we just multiply it by 1.5. And you're more than welcome to use your calculator if you'd like to. And that tells us that there is now a $150 commission for each computer. All right, so the commission after the first 5 is $150 per 1 computer. All right. Now, we've already figured out that the total commission from the first 5 computers is $500. And we know that 8 minus 5 is 3. So there are 3 additional computers that we're going to have to calculate this for. So 150 times 3 is 450. Now, I know that perhaps you might be wondering, why did I multiply this by 3? Okay, well, remember, we had 8 computers total, and we figured out the cost for the first 5, which leaves us with 3 remaining computers that we have to figure out the commission on those 3. That's why we multiplied by 3 here. So we have $500 that was made on the first 500, okay, and then for the next 3 computers sold, total commission was $450. All right, so we add this up, and that gives us $950. Okay, so hopefully this makes sense. And if you have trouble with this again, don't worry. This is a little bit tricky of a question. Which graph could represent the relationship between x and y if it is known that y always decreases as x increases? Is it A, B, C, D, or what about E? So now would be a good time to have you pause the video, try this question out, and if you get stuck, don't worry, because we're just going to go over how to do it. Okay, so for helping people understand these types of questions here, I like to draw out stick figures, and if you can see the answer here without thinking of it this way, that's great. But I think that for some people, at least when you're first learning how to kind of read graphs, I think that stick figure concept, although it's kind of corny, it does help some people see this. So that's why I take the time to teach it this way. And my philosophy is that I would rather I'd rather over-explain something than under-explain it here. So basically, what we want to see here, the y-axis is the up and down axis here. And the x-axis is the left to right axis here. So x increases. Basically, what we want to do here is we want to imagine the stick figure starting at the left on each line. And we want to imagine that person following the line, whatever direction the line takes. And if the person would be going down the entire time, then we know that on that case, y is always decreasing as x increases. All right, so let's look at 1 right here. So if the stick figure starts right here and just follows the line and just walks and follows the line, we see that that person would be going uphill. So that would tell us that as x increases, y is also increasing. So 1 would be out. So let's look now at 2. So if the stick person starts over here at the leftmost part of the line and just follows the direction of the line, we would see that that person would be going down a hill the entire time. So 2 is going to be at least one of the answers. All right. So now let's look at graph 3 here. So if we imagine that the person starts down here, and if they follow the line, looks like the person's going to be going up, but then they're going to kind of have this phase right here where they're neither increasing or decreasing, and then they're going to be going down. So in graph 3, all right, as x increases, for some of the time, y is increasing. For some of the time, it looks like there's no change. And then for some of the time, we see that y is going to be decreasing. But overall, we would have to rule 3 out, all right, because the entire time, y is not decreasing as x increases. Now, if we look at number 4 right here, we start at the leftmost portion and we imagine the person just follows the line, all right, we would see that the entire time the person would be going down a hill, which means that as x increases, y is also decreasing. So 2 and 4 appear to be the answers, so E is the correct answer here. All right, so hopefully this makes sense. It's a little bit tricky, and obviously if you can just look at the graphs and you can just tell, that's ideal, but I bring in the stick figure concept, although it's a little bit silly here, to kind of help people see this that have trouble following the concept here. Consider the following advertisement. Sale on iris bulbs. For the first half dozen, $5 per bulb. Second half dozen, $4 per bulb. Each additional bulb, $3 per bulb. Which of the following calculations represent the cost of 2 dozen iris bulbs? Is it A, B, C, D, or what about E? So now would be a good time to have you pause the video, try to figure this out, and as always, we're just going to go over it, so don't worry, don't stress out if you get stuck. We only care about the learning right now. Okay, so let's talk about this question here. So basically, think about it here. First of all, note that a dozen means 12 and half a dozen means 6. Okay, so we want to know here, we're buying 2 dozen iris bulbs total, and we're told for the first half dozen, it's $5 per bulb. So if a dozen is 12, that means that a half a dozen is 6. So we're buying 6, and they cost $5 each, all right, for the first 6. And then for the second half dozen, or in other words, the second 6, all right, we're going to buy another 6, and they're $4 each. So we would have to do 6 times 4. All right, so again, all we're doing here is we're buying the first 6 at a cost of $5 each. Then we're going to add to that another 6, but these 6 cost $4 each. And please forgive how terrible this dollar sign is right here. This is supposed to be a dollar sign. Let me rewrite that real quick. I don't know if that's not really much better, but anyway, now we are on to each additional bulb. So we already have a dozen bulbs here, right? We've got 6 here plus another 6 gives us 12. All right, so that's 1 dozen. And so how many more bulbs are we buying? Well, we're buying another 12. And this time they cost $3 each per bulb. So we do 12 times 3 because we're buying 12 at a cost of $3 each. And so to figure out the total cost for the 2 dozen bulbs, this is the calculation that you'd want to put in your calculator. In this case, they're not making us actually do the calculation, and C is the correct answer here. At a movie rental machine, the movies rent for $3, except on Tuesdays when they rent for 49 cents. Approximately what percent of the regular cost is saved by renting a movie on a Tuesday? Is it A, B, C, D, or E? So now would be a good time to have you pause the video, try to figure this out, and then when you're ready, we'll go over the answer. Okay, so basically, a good first step would be to take the $3 and subtract from it 49 cents. And what this tells us is the amount that you would save by renting on a Tuesday versus renting on any other day of the week. So $3 minus 49 cents equals $2.51. So again, if you rent a movie on a Tuesday, you would save $2.51. All right, so now that we figured out the amount that you would save, we want to figure out what percent of the regular cost is saved by renting on a Tuesday. So here is the percent formula. Part over whole equals percent over 100. Okay, so in this case here, all right, 2.51 is going to go into the equation here in place of the word part. And I'm not going to put the dollar signs in anymore just to save time and just kind of make it a little bit easier to read here. So the whole is 3. So I'm going to take the number 3 and plug it into the formula in place of the whole. All right, so I've got 2.51 divided by 3 equals percent divided by 100. And what I want to do is I want to get this percent sign by itself on the right side of the equation. And that's going to tell me what the percent saved is. Okay, so all I did, again, I took this formula, part over whole equals percent over 100, and I'm just plugging these numbers in. 2.51 goes in for the part, 3 goes in here for the whole. All right, and now since I want to find out what the percent is, and I see it's percent divided by 100, I have to do the opposite of division, which is multiplication. So I'm going to multiply by 100. All right, and whatever I do on one side, I also have to do it on the other side. So I'm going to have to multiply everything over here by 100 as well. All right, so the hundreds are going to cancel out on the right side, leaving me with percent. And in my calculator, I'm going to do 100 times 2.51 divided by 3. And if I do that, I'm going to get an answer that looks something like this. I get 83 point and a bunch of sixes here, which really that would all round up to 84% because it's asking us approximately what percent of the regular cost is saved. Now, I know there's someone out there watching this and maybe you didn't need to write out this formula. Maybe you just knew to do 2.51 divided by 3 times 100 and you were able to just get the answer a lot faster, and that's great, but I just wanted to teach this percent formula here in case you haven't seen this yet and you're studying. All right, and so let's move on to the next question. So the first champion shoutout today goes to a test taker who just passed math, and our test taker says, anyone who doesn't believe in themselves right now that they can pass the math test, you definitely can. I'm not math savvy at all, but I came out with a decent score. Literally found out my score 10 minutes ago, and the test taker wants everyone to know I'm rooting for you, you got this. And so I also want to give a champion shout out to Sean, who says, I just passed GED math my first try today with a 167, which is a really high score, so congratulations to Sean. And I also want to share an example of someone who says, people, I failed 5 times before passing math on my 6th try. Don't give up, you'll get there. Now, obviously, I hope for everyone to pass on their first try. I don't want to see anybody have to take 6 attempts, but hey, you got to do what you got to do. And here's an example of someone who persevered and eventually succeeded. And you can do that too. The wood floor of a community rec center is in the shape of a square that is 200 feet by 200 feet. If directions on a bottle of floor wax indicate that half of the bottle will cover approximately 2,000 square feet, about how many full bottles of floor wax are needed to wax the wooden floor? Is it A, 5, B, 10, C, 20, D, 40, or what about E, 100? So now would be a good time to have you pause the video, try to figure this question out, and then when you're ready, we'll go over the answer. Okay, so let me put this square here just to kind of help us visualize the question, because we're told that we've got a floor here that is shaped like a square, and we're told that the dimensions are 200 feet by 200 feet. And in this case here, we see that we're told half a bottle will cover about 2,000 square feet. Now, whenever you see any kind of unit squared, whether it's square feet or square meters, that can sometimes be a hint that you're going to have to calculate the area at some point in the question. So maybe you saw that, maybe you didn't, and that's perfectly okay if you didn't see that. But just note that any kind of unit squared, it's not always, but it's in a lot of cases going to be a clue that you're going to have to calculate the area. So we've got 200 feet and 200 feet, and if we multiply them together, we're going to get the area of the square here, okay? So 200 times 200 is 40,000 square feet. And I'm not going to bother writing the units just to kind of save time here. All right, but this is the area of the square. All right, so the area of that square is found by calculating side times side. So we do 200 times 200, we get 40,000 square feet as the area of the square. So hopefully that's clear. And we're now told that half a bottle will cover approximately 2,000 square feet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to double this, all right? So if half a bottle covers 2,000 square feet, that means that one bottle is going to cover 4,000 square feet, all right? And all I did to figure that out was I said half a bottle covers 2,000 square feet, so therefore if I double that, all right, one bottle will cover 4,000 square feet, because if you double 2,000, it gives you 4,000. Okay, so hopefully this makes sense. All right, so one bottle will cover 4,000 square feet, and we know that the total area is 40,000 square feet. So to get the answer here, to figure out how many bottles you would need, you would do 40,000 square feet divided by 4,000 square feet. And that's going to give you about 10, or exactly 10, which is B. So B is the right answer here, 10. So hopefully this makes sense. This is a little bit of a tricky question, so if you got this right, great work, and if not, great work for sticking with me so far into the video. A couch advertised for $500 can be purchased for a down payment of $200 plus 5 equal monthly installments. What is the amount of each monthly installment? Is it A, 300, is it B, 100, C, 80, D, 60, or is it E, $40? So now would be a good time to have you pause the video, try to figure this out, and then when you're ready, we'll go over the answer. Okay, so basically, we know that there's a $200 down payment required to put down on the couch here. All right, so how much is left after that $500 payment? All right, well, 500 minus 200 is 300. All right, so after that $200 down payment, there is a total of $300 that the person who's buying the couch is going to have to pay before they officially own that couch. And that $300 is split over 5 equal monthly installments. All right, so in other words, we're going to do 300 divided by 5, and the answer is 60. So that tells us that if you, or whoever's buying the couch, that person, they put a $200 down payment down, and then for 5 months they pay $60 each, they will eventually pay off the cost of that couch. So D is the right answer here. A local newspaper is featuring news about the end of the school year on the front page, including articles on the senior prom, the state champion track team, and the retiring teachers. The following diagram shows the planned layout of the front page. Each layout area is either a rectangle or a combination of rectangles. And so up here is the question. It says, what percent of the front page is taken up by the prom story, including the prom photograph? Is it A, 20%, B, 22%, C, 25%, D, 45%, or E, 60%? So let's have you pause the video now if you'd like to try this out. And if you get stuck, don't worry, because we're just going to go over the answer. Okay, let's talk about this. So let's look at the section that is the prom and the photo out of all of this here. So this whole kind of box right here is what we want to focus on. And so we're trying to figure out what percent of the whole this takes up. So the first step that you could do would be to calculate the area of the entire front page. All right, so we know it's 5 units by 4 units. So the area of the whole we would do 5 times 4, all right, and that's going to give us 20. Again, because we know that on the front page here we've got 5 units by 4 units, so the area would just be 5 times 4, which gives us 20. So now let's zoom in on this whole part here that includes the prom and the photo. Okay, so it looks like, what I see is it looks like 1 unit right here, all right, and then I see another unit right here. Okay, and so I'm figuring this out. I'm just kind of looking over here on the scale where it shows me where it says right here 5 units. I'm just kind of mapping out. It looks like this side of our prom and photo portion here looks like 2 units. All right, now I can do the same thing up here. All right, so out of this 4 unit portion here, all right, what I see is that it looks like, all right, we've got another 2 units up here. All right, so again, this kind of box, this whole box right here where we've got the prom and the photo, this is what I'm paying attention to right here. And it looks like this is 2 by 2. All right, so I can find the area of this region by doing 2 times 2, all right, which gives me 4. Okay, so now we can bring in our formula for part over whole equals percent over 100. And again, like I said earlier in the video, if you can do this without needing to use the formula, just kind of plug the numbers in and know how to do this, that's ideal. But if not, that's what the formula is here for. So in this case, the part is 4 and the whole is 20. All right, so we've got 4 over 20 equals percent over 100. Okay, and just like I showed you in the last similar example where we had to use this formula, all right, you have to multiply by 100 on this side in order to get the percent symbol by itself. And whatever you do to one side, you also have to do to the other. So I'm going to multiply by 100 over here as well. All right, so in other words, all I'm doing is 4 divided by 20, and I'm going to multiply that by 100. All right, and that's going to tell me that 20% is the right answer. So what percent of the front page is taken up by the prom story, including that prom photograph? It is exactly 20%. So hopefully this all makes sense. All right, so the next question says, which set of ordered pairs represents a function? Is it A, B, C, D, or E? Let me turn it over to you, and you can try this question if you'd like to. And if you get stuck, don't worry. As always, we're just here to learn. Okay, so here's a few notes I've typed out for questions like this that you might get in the future. So the first thing that I'd like you to know about a function is that each input is related to exactly one output. And hopefully by the end of my explanation here, this will make sense, because this, just by reading these terms out here, it might seem like I'm speaking another language. All right, so the first number in an ordered pair is an input, and the second is an output, okay? So what I mean by this is that if we take any ordered pair, like for example, -5 and 5, okay, the first number is always going to be the input, and the second number is the output, okay? That's what I mean by the second point here. So our general strategy here for this question, and as I've said throughout the video, you're free to take this strategy or leave it, but I think that this is a pretty straightforward way to approach questions like this. Okay, the first thing you want to do is, for each answer choice, look at all of the ordered pairs and see if any of them have the same input, okay? And if any of them have the same input, you then want to go and see if they have different outputs, and if the outputs differ, it's definitely not a function, okay? So let's look at A right here. So let's check each ordered pair and see if any of them have the same inputs. And right off the bat, I see -5 and -5 match. So this ordered pair here and the third ordered pair for answer choice A, they have the same input. So the next thing I want to do is look at the outputs and see if they match. So the output of the first ordered pair is 5. The output of this ordered pair is -6. All right, so they don't match. Therefore, this is not a function. So we can do the same thing for B here. So in B, it looks like each ordered pair they all have the same input here. But the outputs differ, right? This has -1 as the output, this pair has 6 as the output, and this has -10. So all the outputs differ here, okay? So let's come down here to D. All right, so for D, let's see, do any of these pairs have the same inputs? Well, it looks like these two pairs right here, this pair here and this pair here, all right, these both have the same inputs, -2. All right, so let's look and see, do the outputs differ? Well, this one has 4, this one has -5. So the outputs differ, so this is not a function. We can do the same thing with E here, all right? We want to see, do any of these pairs have the same inputs? In this case, this pair has the same input, and this pair has the same input, okay? And it looks like they both have different outputs here. This pair has 5, this pair has 3. All right, so this is not a function. Now, if we look at C, let's check all the inputs. This pair has -3 as an input, this pair has 2 as an input, and this pair has -7 as an input. They all have different inputs, and C ends up being our correct answer here, okay? So hopefully this makes sense. You know, I have other examples of function questions like this in other videos here. Roller coasters or water slides? I'd pick roller coasters. Ketchup or ranch? I'm going to take ranch. Night out or night in? Well, I'm kind of boring. I'm going to go night in. Hot coffee or iced coffee? I usually go iced coffee if I have a choice. Which of the following expressions is equivalent to 10a raised to the 6th power divided by -2 times a raised to the 3rd power? Is it A, B, C, D, or E? So now would be a good time to have you pause the video, try to figure this question out, and then when you're ready, we'll go over the answer. Okay, so first of all, 10 divided by -2 is -5. All right, so that's simple enough. But the problem here is, how do we deal with a to the 6th divided by a to the power of 3? All right, so again, all I did was I did 10 divided by -2, which gave me -5. That's why I have this -5 here. And we now have -5 times a to the 6th divided by a to the power of 3. All right, so whenever you've got a situation like this, all right, where you've got the same bases, all right, and you are doing a division question, this is really the same as just subtracting the exponent. So this -5 times a to the 6th divided by a to the 3rd, that is really the same as a to the 6th, all right, a to the 6th minus 3. And if you do 6 minus 3, that's obviously going to give you 3. So we'd have -5a raised to the 3rd power here. Okay, so the basic rules of thumb here, and I'm just going to give you 2 for the sake of time. If you haven't studied your exponent rules yet, then this will hopefully give you a quick recap here. If you've got a raised to the 6th divided by a raised to the power of 3, this is equal to a raised to the 6th minus 3. And a to the 6th minus 3 is equal to a to the 3, because 6 minus 3 is 3. I'm going over this super fast here, all right, because I do have a video on this topic here. I'm just giving you a little crash course, all right. If on the other hand you had a to the 6th times a to the 3rd, in this case, we've got the same bases but different exponents and we're multiplying. In this case, a to the 6th times a to the 3rd is the same as a to the 6th plus 3. All right, and 6 plus 3 equals 9. So this would be the same as a to the 9th power, all right? But anyway, the end result here is B. B is the correct answer. I just gave you a little mini lesson on 2 exponent rules to know for your test. Now, I have a whole video where I break down exponent rules and tons of examples. 99% of the time when I reference videos throughout my videos, I forget to link them down below. So, you know, I'll try to remember to put a link to that exponent rule video down in my description. If I forget, which I often do, please just get down there in the comments and let me know, ask me to link to that video, and I definitely will see the comment at some point and give you that video link, all right? But anyway, I went over this a little fast because I do have other videos on exponent rules, but hopefully you got B as the right answer, and if not, hopefully my explanation makes sense. And if my explanation doesn't make sense, I do have that video on exponents that should clear it up. Okay, let's move on to the next question. Great work making it this far into the video. The sale price of a hat Tyler wants to buy is 20% off the regular price. One way to determine the sale price is for Tyler to A, multiply the regular price by 0.2, B. Multiply the regular price by 1 minus 0.2. C. Divide the regular price by 0.2. D. Divide the regular price by 1 minus 0.2. E. Divide the regular price by 1 plus 0.2. So let's have you pause the video, try to figure this question out, and then when you're ready, we'll go over the answer to this question. Okay, so like many questions in math, there's more than one way to think about this question. But basically, let's let x represent that regular price. All right, we don't know what the regular price is, but let's just let x represent that regular price. And to figure out how much Tyler's going to pay, if it's 20% off, you would do x minus 0.2 times x. All right, so let me break down why I'm doing this. 20% as a decimal equals 0.2. Again, we don't know what that regular price is, so I'm just going to call it x. And we would do x minus 0.2 times x to find the sales price after the 20% off sale. Now, in this case, both of my terms have an x in it, so I can actually factor the x out. And I can rewrite this as x times 1 minus 0.2. Okay, so in other words, to find the sales price Tyler is going to pay, to find the price Tyler's going to pay after taking 20% off, because it's a 20% off sale, you would take that original price and multiply it by 1 minus 0.2, as we see in B. All right, so the way this question and the answer choices are worded here makes this a little bit tricky, but B is the correct answer here. A scientist found that the height of a mountain increased by approximately 5 times 10 to the negative 4 meters each month. If this rate of change continues, by how many meters will the height of the mountain increase in 1 year? A. 6 times 10 to the negative 3. B. 6 times 10 to the negative 4. C. 6 times 10 to the negative 5. D. 12 times 10 to the negative 4. Or E. 17 times 10 to the negative 4. So let's have you pause the video, try to figure this out, and then when you're ready, we'll go over the answer. Okay, here, so, all right, so in this case here, there's maybe a couple different ways to look at this here, but the way I'll have us start off with is just recognizing here that it's telling us that the height of the mountain increased by 5 times 10 to the negative 4 meters each month, and we want to know after 1 year, by how many meters will the height increase? And 1 year is equal to 12 months. So the first thing I want to do is just do 12 times 5 times 10 to the negative 4. And particularly, we can just start off by doing 12 times 5. So 12 times 5 is 60. So we can rewrite this as 60 times 10 to the negative 4. All right? So 60 times 10 to the negative 4. Now, when we look over here at our answer choices, though, we see that A, B, and C all have 6 in them, but we don't see 60. So what that tells me is that I need to take this 60 and I need to turn it into a 6. All right, so in other words, I'm going to take this decimal point and I'm going to move it to the left 1 point to turn this into a 6. And when I do that, all right, this 10 to the negative 4 has to change as well. All right, so this would be a good time to really pay close attention because this concept is a little bit tricky. All right, I've got this first number here, which is 60, and I want to turn it into a 6. All right, so if I make this first number here smaller, this 10 to the negative 4 has to get bigger. And since negative 3 is bigger than negative 4, all right, this has to become 10 to the negative 3. So in other words, I took this 60, I turned it into a 6. So I made this number smaller. So this number, which was 10 to the negative 4, it has to get bigger. And I made it bigger, and I made it 10 to the negative 3. Right? So that's a super conceptual explanation of this. And if you haven't studied scientific notation yet, or if you don't have that concept down 100% yet, then this was probably tricky for you. And in that case, what I would recommend you do is schedule some time to study scientific notation whenever you get the chance to. This is a little tricky here, so I'm not expecting that you will understand the topic just by this one explanation. So if you have trouble with this, please make some time to study scientific notation. All right, but the answer is 6 times 10 to the negative 3. The formula for the perimeter P of the triangle shown is P equals 2n plus B. Which formula is equivalent to the perimeter formula but is solved for n? A, B, C, D, or E? So now would be a good time to have you pause the video, try to figure this out, and then when you're ready, we'll go over the answer. Okay, so in this case here, what we want to do is we want to just take this equation here and we want to solve it for n. And if you're wondering, solve for n, what does that mean? That's just another way of saying we want to get n by itself on one side of the equation. All right, so the first thing that we can do here, since we've got 2n plus b, all right, is we can get rid of this b. So 2n plus b, what is the opposite operation of addition? The opposite operation of addition is subtraction. So if I subtract b, the b's are going to cancel out. And on the right-hand side of my equation, I'll just have 2n. But whatever I do to one side, I also have to do to the other. So I have to do p minus b, all right? Because I have to subtract b on both sides of my equation. So I now have p minus b equals 2 times n. And remember, we want to solve for n. So in other words, we want to get n by itself. If I have 2 times n, the opposite of times is division. So I have to divide by 2. I do that, these cancel out, and whatever I do to one side, I also have to do it to the other. So the end result here would be p minus b divided by 2 equals n. All right, and that corresponds with answer choice C. So this is a really important skill for the entire math section. So please make sure that you understood this. A basket that contains 2 apples, 3 bananas, 6 oranges, and 4 pears is in the workroom. When Mrs. Hutchinson went to the workroom, other workers had already taken 1 banana, 2 oranges, and 1 pear. From the remaining fruit, Ms. Hutchinson randomly took 3 pieces of fruit separately from the basket. If each fruit is equally likely to be chosen, what is the probability that the third piece was an orange if the first 2 she took were also oranges? So now would be a good time to pause the video, take your time with this one, just give this one a shot, and when you're ready, we'll go over the answer. Okay, so this question's somewhat complex here, and at first, let's count up how many pieces of fruit are in the initial basket. So we've got a basket that contains 2 apples, 3 bananas, 6 oranges, and 4 pears, all right? So if we add up all of the pieces of fruit, we will see that there are 15 total in the basket at the start. All right, and then Miss Hutchinson comes into the workroom and she sees that other workers took 1 banana, 2 oranges, and 1 pear. So 1 banana plus 2 oranges plus 1 pear. All right, that equals 4 that we're missing. So initially there were 15 pieces of fruit. She comes in and sees that 4 are missing. So now at this point when Miss Hutchinson, whatever her name is, comes in, there are 11 pieces of fruit left in the basket. Okay. So that's where we're starting from now. And it says here that also we should note that out of the fruit that was taken, 2 of those pieces were oranges. So if initially in the basket there were 6 oranges, and when Miss Hutchinson comes back in, there were 2 oranges missing, that means that there are 4 oranges that are still fair game here. Okay, so we've got to kind of, just follow a logical process here to get to this point here. All right, so at this point, when Miss Hutchinson comes in, there are 11 pieces of fruit left, and 4 of those fruit are oranges. So it says, from the remaining fruit, Miss Hutchinson randomly took 3 pieces. If each fruit is equally likely to be chosen, what is the probability that the third piece was an orange if the first 2 she took were also oranges? So for her first pick here, what's the probability that she will pick an orange? Well, there are 11 pieces of fruit total, and 4 of them are oranges. So on her first pick, she has a 4 out of 11 chance of picking an orange. All right, so now let's think about her second pick. All right, so for her second pick, so on the first pick, say that she does grab an orange. All right, so how many pieces of fruit are going to be left in the basket for the second pick? Well, there's now only going to be 10. And if we're to assume that on her first pick she picked 1 orange, that means that the probability of getting an orange on the second pick would be 3 out of 10. All right, so hopefully you're following this so far. And now let's say on her second pick, she picks out another orange. right? So on our third pick, then how many oranges would be left? There would be 2. Okay, and how many pieces of fruit total would be left? Well, there would be 9. Okay, so the answer here is E, 2 out of 9. And this is just kind of a complicated question here. You just kind of have to use logic and reason your way through this. And again, if you have another way that you use to get the solution or another way of thinking about this, let me know down below. I'm always interested in hearing this, but don't feel bad if you got this wrong. This is a tricky question. On a trip to visit friends, a family drives 65 miles per hour for 208 miles of the trip. If the entire trip was 348 miles and took 6 hours, what was the average speed in miles per hour for the rest of the trip? Is it A, 44, B, 50, C, 51, D, 58, or is it E, 60? So now would be a good time to pause the video, try to figure this out, and then when you're ready, we'll go over the answer. Okay, so in this question, we will be using the distance formula, which is distance equals rate times time. And really, there's 2 different parts to the trip, right? So the first part says that a family drives 65 miles per hour for 208 miles of the trip. And if the entire trip was 348 miles, we want to just know what was the average speed for the rest of that trip. Okay, so the first step that we're going to do here is we're going to take that 208 miles, all right, and we are going to multiply that by 1 hour divided by 65 miles. Okay. And we're doing this because we want to figure out how many hours the first part of our trip was. Okay. So again, all I'm doing here, it says that on a trip, the family drives 65 miles per hour for 208 miles. So I can take the 208 miles, multiply it by 1 hour divided by 65 miles. Another way to put that would be I'm going to do 208 divided by 6. Okay, and that's going to give me 3.2 hours. Okay, so basically, see how the units cancel out? The miles cancel out here. And when I do 208 divided by 65, I'm left with 3.2 hours here. Okay, and so basically, now I can take the fact that the entire trip was 6 hours, and I can do 6 minus 3.2. Okay, and that's going to tell me how many hours the second part of the trip was. So 6 minus 3.2 equals 2.8 hours. All right, for the second part of the trip. So what I want to do to figure out that rate for that second part of the trip, okay, is I have one more step. I need to figure out how many miles that second part of the trip was. So what I want to do next is I want to take the fact that the entire trip was 348 miles, and I want to do 348 minus 208. And that gives me 140 miles. Okay, hopefully this is making sense. I know this is a little bit confusing here, but basically, again, what I'm doing is I need to figure out for the second part of the trip. What I've just done is I figured out that they drove a total of 140 miles during the second part of the trip, and the speed was 2.8 hours. So I now have the 2 crucial pieces that I need. All right, this is 2 pieces I need for the rest of the trip, or the second part of the trip. And I can plug these into the distance formula, and that will give me the final answer here. So D equals R over T. The distance I know is 140 miles. All right, and I know that that is equal to R times the time, which is 2.8 hours. Okay. And I need to figure out what the R is. So I want to divide by 2.8 on both sides here. Okay. And when I do 140 divided by 2.8, all right, the answer is that 50 equals R. So after all this work, the final answer was B, 50 miles per hour. Which of the following expressions is equivalent to x squared plus 3x plus 1 all over x plus 1? So now would be a good time to pause the video, try to figure this out, and then when you're ready, we'll go over the answer. Okay, so this is kind of a hard question here. And so basically, the best approach, in my opinion, to solving this is to just kind of jump in here. And just by looking A and B, those don't really seem like they're that plausible to me to be the answers. So let's test C right here. And so let me test C. And what I mean by test C is, we're going to do some math here and see if C ends up being equivalent to this expression here. So we've got x plus 2 minus 1 over x plus 1. Okay, and so this is a fraction here, 1 over x plus 1. And whenever you subtract fractions, hopefully you remember that you need to get what's called a common denominator. And if you didn't remember that, or you don't remember coming across that in your studying, or you just don't remember learning that before, that's perfectly okay. We've got x plus 2 over 1 here. And I need the number in the bottom of my fraction here, which is 1. I need that to match x plus 1. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply the top and the bottom of this first fraction here, which is x plus 2 over 1. I'm going to multiply the top and the bottom by x plus 1. Okay. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this x plus 1 and I'm going to use the FOIL method here. All right, first, outer, inner, last. That's what FOIL stands for. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take the first term, which is an x, and I'm going to multiply it by the first term over here. So x times x. I'll write this out up here. X times x gives me x squared. All right, now let me do the outer term. So I'm going to take this x here, and I'm going to multiply it by this 2. X times 2 is just 2x. So I now have x squared plus 2x. Now I'm going to do the inner term. So I'm going to do this 1 times the x, which is just x. All right, so I'm going to have to add another x here. And the last numbers that I didn't multiply are the 1 and the 2. So 1 times 2 is just 2. Okay. So if I do the math here, let me rewrite all of this down here. I'll have x squared plus 3x plus 2. Okay. Minus 1. And everything is over x plus 1 now. Okay. And you might be wondering here, why is everything over x plus 1? Well, remember, okay, everything over here, all right, remember, the denominator is going to be x plus 1 times 1, which is just x plus 1. And so now the two fractions have the same denominator. So that's why I can write everything as x plus 1. Okay, so let me show you what I mean right here. So if I've got a question like this, I'm going to use simple numbers. I've got 2 over a plus b, say, plus another fraction, say 7 over a plus b. Okay, this is the same as 2 plus 7 over just a plus b. Okay, so this is a general math rule that is very important here. Okay, and if you're wondering why do I have 3x, it's because 2x plus 1x is 3x. Okay, so now the last thing I can do here is I've got 2 minus 1. 2 minus 1 is just 1. So let me just cross this out here. And 2 minus 1 is just 1. So the final answer here is going to be x squared plus 3x plus 1 divided by x plus 1, which means C is the right answer. So all I did was I took C here and I did some math, and I realized that C comes out to be the same thing as the initial expression, which was x squared plus 3x plus 1 divided by x plus 1. All right, and if you had trouble following this, note that this is kind of a harder question, so don't worry about it. Just make sure you kind of understand what we're doing here. The amount of hot cocoa powder remaining in a can is 6 1/4 tablespoons. A single serving consists of 1 3/4 tablespoons of the powder. What is the total number of servings of the powder remaining in the can? Is it A, B, C, D, or E? So now would be a good time to have you pause the video, try to figure this out, and if you get stuck, don't worry because we're just going to go over the answer. We're just here to learn. Okay, so my first move here, and you might have done this differently, like I said several times in this video, with a lot of math problems, there is usually not just one right way to do it. In some cases, there's just one right way to do it, but that's not always going to be the case. So if you did this a different way and you got the right answer, then you probably still found a valid way to do it. But I'm going to convert these mixed numbers, the 6 and 1/4, I'm going to put it in as a decimal as 6.25. And I'm going to do the same with this 1 3/4. I'm going to convert that to 1.75. Now, you might be wondering, well, how in the world do I make this conversion? How do I take this fraction and put it into a decimal? Well, all you have to do is in your calculator, all right, first just put your 6 here, put your decimal, and do 1 divided by 4 in your calculator. You'll see that that is 0.25. So that's why I changed that into 6.25. Same with this 1 3/4. If you don't remember off the top of your head that 3/4 is equal to 0.75, you can just use your calculator. Do 3 divided by 4 in your calculator. You'll see that that equals 0.75. So 1 3/4 becomes 1.75. Okay, and if you want to leave these as mixed numbers and do all the math that way, you'll still get the right answer. I just think it's more confusing if you do it that way. So anyway, what we have to do here, we see a single serving consists of 1 3/4 tablespoons of the powder. Okay, so we are basically given a conversion factor right here, and this is a really important concept to understand, all right? And we really want to follow our units here. And if you're wondering what in the world that means, just stick with me here. All right, we've got 6.25 tablespoons, so I'm just going to put a T here, all right? We've got 6.25 tablespoons, and we know that a single serving consists of 1 3/4 tablespoons of the powder. So what I want to do here is I want to set up my math so that the units cancel out. All right, let me make this like kind of a cursive T so we don't think it's a plus by accident, which is something I would definitely do. So what I want to do is I want to take this 1.75 and I want to put it down here. All right. And up here, I put 1 serving. All right, I'm just going to put 1 serve. So we know a single serving consists of 1.75 tablespoons. So that's all I'm doing here is I'm setting this up. 1 serving has 1.75 tablespoons. And I'm just doing my math here so that the units are going to cancel out. So if I do the math here, if I do 6.25 divided by 1.75 here. Okay, the answer I get is 3.57. And what are my units? My units are now servings. Okay, because my tablespoons are going to cancel out because I'm doing tablespoons divided by tablespoons. These are going to cancel out. And my answer is left in the unit here, which is servings, which is exactly what we want. So what is the total number of servings of the powder remaining in the can? 3.57 servings. But there's one last catch here. We're going to have to convert these to decimals, right? So 3 1/2, that is the same as 3.5. And if you didn't know off the top of your head that 1/2 is equal to 0.5, you could have just used your calculator. You just do 1 divided by 2 in your calculator, and it's going to tell you that that is equal to 0.5, and you just pull the 3 out in front, which makes it 3.5. All right, so same with B here. So in my calculator, I'm doing 4 divided by 7, and that gives me 0.57. So if I bring the 3 out front here, I make it 3.57. Hey, look, what do you know? B is the correct answer here, okay? So whether you got this right or wrong, understanding like what I did here with canceling out the units, that's a really important skill that comes up again and again in many practice questions that I've looked at. All right, so this is an important question just to understand kind of what I did here, all right? So by all means, please ask down below in the comments if you are struggling to understand this or with any question, because we want you to maximize your score on the test. So if you got this right, great work. If not, great job for trying. Which expression is equivalent to x squared plus 4x divided by 2x? Is it A, B, C, D, or E? So let's have you pause the video, try to figure this question out, and as always, if you get stuck, no worries, we're just going to go over it. Okay, so in this case here for this question, all right, what I see right off the bat is that each term that we look at here has an x in it, and each term also is divisible by 2. So what I can do here is I can divide everything by 2x. Okay, so if I do 6 divided by 2, what does that give me? It gives me 3. And if I do x squared divided by x, I just simply get x. Now, what if I do 4x divided by 2x? Well, 4 divided by 2 is 2. X divided by x is just 1, so I don't even need to write the 1. And 2x divided by 2x is just 1. All right, so if I divide everything by 2x, the final answer I get is 3x plus 2. Each side of rectangle A is 5 times as long as each corresponding side of rectangle B. The area of rectangle A is how many times the area of rectangle B? Is the answer A, B, C, D, or E? Let me have you pause the video and I'll let you try this question out if you'd like to. And if you get stuck, as always, no worries because we're just going to go over the answer. Okay, hopefully you had a chance to try this out. So this is my lopsided drawing of a rectangle. Let me say that this is rectangle B. And I'm drawing on a bigger rectangle here. Or it's really probably, it looks kind of lopsided, but it's supposed to be a rectangle that's bigger, which would be rectangle A. And I'm just drawing these out because I think it's a little bit, it's going to kind of help us here to think through this. So we know that rectangle A is 5 times as long as each corresponding side of rectangle B. So one strategy for this question would be to just, make up numbers for 2 of the sides of rectangle B. And you can pick any numbers here. One has to be bigger than the other, okay? If this was a square, then all the sides would be equal, but it's a rectangle, so that's not exactly the case here. So I'm just going to use 1 and 2, just to make this as simple as possible, but you could use, 2 and 3. You could really use anything as long as one number is bigger than the other, all right? So I like to keep things simple, all right? That's a general principle, not just for the GED, but something I try to use in my life whenever I can, because I think simple is better. That's just me, though. So we have 1 and 2 here as our sides, all right? And so we know that the corresponding sides of rectangle A are going to be 5 times bigger, okay? So this side right here of our rectangle on B, we would do 1 times 5, and we would say, well, hey, that corresponding side of rectangle A, all right, is going to be 5 times bigger. So that's why we would have a 5 here. Okay, now up here, this side of the rectangle, all right, which is 2 on rectangle B, all right, corresponds to obviously this side down here on rectangle A, which is 5 times bigger. So we would do 2 times 5, which is 10. Okay. So now let me calculate the area of both rectangles. So 1 times 2 is just going to be 2, all right? And to get the area of a rectangle, you just do side times side, all right? You do length times width. So 5 times 10 is 50. Okay. So the area of rectangle A is how many times the area of rectangle B? So I have to find the area of both rectangles, and I'm just going to divide, all right? So I'm going to divide 50 by 2, and the answer I get is 25. Okay? So regardless of what numbers you picked up here, as long as, if you did it this way, if you had another way to do it and you got the right answer, that's fine too. But, like I said, you just have to pick 2 numbers that are different. One has to be bigger than the other, and you have to multiply the corresponding sides by 5. You find the area of the 2 rectangles, divide them, and you're going to get the same answer, regardless of what numbers you pick. Okay, so D is the correct answer here. So here we have x minus 8 divided by 24 equals 3 over 4, and the question is, what is the value of x in the equation? So now would be a good time to have you pause the video, try to figure this out, and then when you're ready, we'll go over the answer. Okay, so there's a couple different ways to approach this, but the main idea here is that we want to figure out what x is. So in other words, we have to get x by itself on one side of our equation. So again, there's several different ways to approach this, but here we have x minus 8 all over 24, or in other words, divided by 24. So if I want to get rid of this 24, what I need to do is multiply by 24 on both sides, okay? And you might be wondering, why does that make sense? Well, because if I multiply by 24 on this side, the 24s are going to cancel out here. Okay, and when I rewrite this, I will just have x minus 8 equals 3 times 24, which 3 times 24 is 72. All right, 72 all over 4. Okay, and if you're wondering again, how did I get 72 here? It's because 3 times 24 is 72. All right, so now what I can do is I can do the division here, 72 divided by 4, which is 72 divided by 4 is 18. So I've got x minus 8, and I do have a calculator off screen that I'm using. I did not know that off the top of my head. So I have x minus 8 equals 18. And from here, again, remember, the goal is to get the x by itself. Okay, and so I can do this by adding 8 to both sides. And if you're wondering, why does that make sense? It's because x minus 8, I have to do the opposite of subtraction, which is addition. Okay, so I add 8 to both sides, and the answer I would get would be 26. Okay, so that's one way to do this. And then let me back up here and let me show you the other way, which I call the plug-in trick. And basically what you can do here is you can take each answer choice here and plug it in for x, and you can see if you get something equal to 3 over 4. All right, and it's up to you to decide if you think it's faster to just plug the numbers into your calculator, but the idea here would be that you would plug 10 in for x, and then you just crunch the numbers in your calculator. So you would do 10 minus 8, and then you would divide that by 24. And if I do that in my calculator, I'll see that that would be equal to 0.08 and then a bunch of 3's. Okay. And 3 over 4 is equal to 0.75. Okay, so this is not going to be the right answer because I want to pick an answer choice that I can plug in for x, and that has to make this side of the equation equal to 0.75. Okay, so that's not going to work. All right, so let me try it with 20. All right, so 20 minus 8 divided by 24 is going to give us 0.5. All right, so if I plug 20 in here for x and I plug into my calculator, 20 minus 8 divided by 24, I get 0.5. Now, is 0.5 equal to 0.75? No, it's not. So this is also not the answer choice. Okay, and keep in mind here, you might be wondering, why is it 0.75? All right, it's because 3 over 4 is equal to 0.75. Okay, so let me try this with 26. All right, so now I could plug 26 in here. All right, so I would have 26 minus 8, and I would divide that by 24, and that gives me 0.75. All right, so 0.75 is equal to 0.75. All right, so C is the right answer. So I went through that explanation kind of fast, but I'm just showing you here that, another way to solve this would be to, take each answer choice, plug it in for x, all right, and see if one of the answer choices, see which answer choice makes this side of the equation equal to 3 over 4. Okay, so multiple ways to look at this question. It's up to you to decide which way will be faster for you. Matthew's age is 3 years more than twice Rita's age. Which equation shows the relationship between their ages? Is it A, B, C, D, or E? Now would be a good time to have you pause the video, try to figure this out, and then when you're ready, we'll go over the answer. Okay, so I'm going to start my equation with an M here, all right, and the word is, you can often translate that into an equal sign. So it says Matthew's age is, that's why I'm going to put an equals right here, is 3 years more than twice Rita's age. So 3 years, so let me just put a 3 here, more than, so I'm going to put a plus, all right, the word's more than, I'm going to translate that into a plus, twice Rita's age. So twice means 2 times Rita's age, which is R. All right, so this would be M. Matthew's age is 3 more than twice Rita's age. Okay, and in this case, what they did was they just wrote 2R plus 3. I have 3 plus 2R. It's the same thing, just written a little bit differently, but E is the correct answer. Okay, so there are kind of keywords you can use to think your way through these questions, but you just at the end of the day have to practice reasoning your way through questions like this, and you do enough examples, eventually it'll click, and hopefully this one makes sense. A radio station ordered hats and coffee mugs to give away as prizes. A total of 1,000 of these items were ordered, and 3 times as many coffee mugs were ordered as hats. In which equation does H represent the number of hats ordered? Is it A, B, C, D, or E? So now would be a good time to pause the video, try to figure this out, and then when you're ready, we'll go over how to do the question. Okay, so basically, we've got a total of 1,000 items ordered. All right, now out of these items, there are hats and coffee mugs. So there's 1,000 items total that were ordered. All right, and we can get the total by adding the hats and the coffee mugs. All right, now in this case, we're told that 3 times as many coffee mugs were ordered as hats. So the total number of coffee mugs ordered is equal to 3 times the number of hats. So in other words, C equals 3H. So all I have to do is go to this equation here, and I'm going to replace C with 3H. Okay. So if I rewrite this, I have 1,000 equals H plus 3H. All right, and 1,000 then, if I simplify this, H plus 3H equals 4H. So I've got 1,000 equals 4H. Now, if I have 4 times H and I just want H, what do I do? Well, if it's 4 times H, I do the opposite of times, which is division. So if I divide 4 by one side, I also have to divide by 4 on the other side. These 4's cancel out, and I'm left with 1,000 divided by 4 equals H. So E is the right answer here. Hopefully that makes sense. So the next question here is, in my opinion, the hardest question in this video, and it was a little hard to pick this one out because several of the questions in this video were on the harder side, but I'm going to let you try the Champions Challenge question next, and you can let me know down below, do you think this is the hardest question in the test or not? The function y equals f of x is graphed in the standard xy coordinate plane as shown. Which of the following values is the average rate of change of the function from x equals 1 to x equals 3? Is it A, -4, B, -1, C, -8 over 3, D, -3 over 8, or is it E, -1 over 4? Let's have you pause the video, try this one out, and then when you're ready, as always, we'll go over the answer. And if you don't get this one right, or if you struggle with this, don't worry. It's all about the process. Okay, so the first thing to get this question right is that you have to know that this average rate of change is another word for slope. All right, average rate of change equals the slope. Average rate of change equals the slope. Average rate of change equals the slope. And I just said that 3 times because I really want you to understand that the average rate of change equals the slope. I know it must be annoying to have hear me keep repeating that average rate of change equals slope, but it's really important because if you don't understand that, I'm not sure that you'd be able to get this question right. And so slope is calculated using this formula here. y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. All right, so you use this formula to calculate the slope, and this little m symbol here, that is often used for the word slope. So again, the average rate of change equals the slope. Now, we want to find the average rate of change, which is another word for the slope, from x equals 1 to x equals 3. So we just need to find 2 pairs of coordinates, and we're going to plug those into this formula here to calculate the slope. So where x equals 1, let's find that on the graph. So x equals 1, when x equals 1 here, we see that y equals 4. All right, so we're at this point right here. This is when x equals 1, and when x equals 1, we see that y equals 4. All right, so I'm kind of going over this graph reading skill a little bit fast here. All right, but hopefully that makes sense. And I'm going to label these. So let's call this x1, and let's call this y1. All right, so the next pair we need to find is when x equals 3. So when x equals 3, what does y equal? All right, so let's start by finding 3 on our x-axis. So right here is 3. And now we want to keep going down here until we get to the point that corresponds with the y-axis here. All right, so right here at this point here, this is going to be 3, -4. All right, so in other words, when x equals 3, y equals -4. All right, so hopefully you're able to see this on the graph. All you have to do is find when x equals 3, just go down here until you find the point on the line that corresponds to -4. All right, and so let's call these x2 and y2. Okay, now when I did a lot of work in person GED tutoring type of stuff, a lot of people, a lot of students, they would not want to take the time to label their pairs here. I highly recommend that you label your pairs, write out x1 and y1 and x2 and y2. I know it takes an extra 10 seconds to do it, but I think it's going to help you just keep the number straight a little bit more. But hey, you know what? You're free to choose how you want to do it on the test. But now all we're going to do here is we're going to take our pairs and we're going to plug the numbers in here. So y2 is -4. All right, so I'm going to come and use this formula here. And in place of y2, I'm going to put -4. Okay, so I have y2 minus y1. So what is my y1? Well, I've labeled it already here. My y1 is 4. So I'm going to take this 4 and I'm going to substitute it into the equation in place of y1. Okay, so now I'm going to do the same with x2 and x1. So x2 is 3. So 3 is going to go in here. And then my x1 is 1. So 1 is going to get plugged in here. All right, so this is what I have. I have slope equals -4 minus 4 divided by 3 minus 1. And as I said, it's fair game to use your calculators throughout this test unless I tell you otherwise. And -4 minus 4 is -8. 3 minus 1 is 2. So I've got -8 divided by 2, which is -4. So after all of this, the answer here is -4. So the average rate of change, which is another word for slope, is -4 in this case.